Hey there, and welcome to the Whimsy Stamps YouTube channel. I'm Lisa, and thanks for stopping by. Today, I have several things to chat about. I'm going to give you an update on the magic mushrooms, and I'm going to hopefully help you unlock the secret to masculine cards once and for all. So stick around for all of this and more during today's video. If you're new to the Whimsy Stamps channel and you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button and set that notification bell to stay in touch when new content is posted. And to our loyal subscribers, welcome back. Would you believe me if I said the secret to masculine cards has been right in front of you? I have 3 stamp sets here in front of me. Born to Fish from the right side, Woodland Silhouettes on the left side, and there in the middle, Brewskis. Now I'm super excited for that Born to Fish stamp set. It just released in the store today because it solves one of my biggest challenges when creating masculine cards. There are many stamp sets available on the Whimsy Stamps website that are perfect for masculine cards. These 3 sets represent something the men in my life enjoy, and that's why I chose them. Now, my secret has just revealed itself. By simply taking the time to think about what the men in my life like, I can create a unique card for each of them. This is not about mass producing. This is about sitting down, taking the time to think about the recipient and what brings them the most joy. So Father's Day is coming up on us, and I'm going to base this card making process that I'm sharing with you today off of the fact that I'm going to be giving this card to my dad. Now, all the men in my life, my dad, my brothers, my uncles, my nephews, they love bass fishing. They all have bass boats. They all fish in tournaments. So when Whimsy released this set, I was super excited for it because it filled a gap that I had in my stamp stash. I never found a really nice bass fishing stamp set, and this one really fills it. Now, not only is this for men, this is for women too. And trust me, there are plenty of women out there that love bass fishing. So I love that this set focuses on not just the men, but the women. But for me, today, it's all about my dad. Now, my dad has said to me numerous times, one of the most peaceful moments in his life is when he is out on the lake. It's early in the morning and he's at his fishing spot, ready to start his tournament, and the sun's coming up over the water. And it's so calm and so peaceful for him at that very moment. So that's what I want to recreate on this card for him, is that peace that he feels when he looks out across that lake when that sun is coming up. And that is the secret to creating the perfect masculine card. You have to find what brings the recipient joy, and then once you know that, the card is going to come easily for you. So I have some nephews who like to hunt. So the Woodland Silhouette stamp set would be great for them. Now for my father-in-law, he's a beer man. He loves his beer. And so the Brewskis stamp set and the mug die set would be great to create a card for him, and it would be unique to what he loves. I kind of want to get back to that creating for the recipient. I think mass producing cards is great. It's nice to have cards on hand for when you're wanting to quickly send something out. But when you're creating for someone who's very near and dear to you, like your father or your father-in-law, you want it to mean something, right? So that's why I say the secret to this is just simply look at the person in front of you, figuratively speaking, and go with what they love. So we're going to go ahead and get into the process of creating this card for my dad. I can't wait to give you some details. I'm actually going to go through the coloring process of the bass with you. We're going to talk about the magic mushrooms. Right now, what I'm doing is laying down some anti-static powder so that I can go ahead and heat emboss my silhouette of this man on this boat catching a fish. So what I want to do is I'm using Bristol Smooth paper for this because I will be using Distress Oxides with those magic mushrooms. So what I want to do is go ahead and stamp my silhouette image and get it heat set so that my Distress Oxide inks don't bleed through the ink. So by stamping these with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, we're going to go ahead and take it out, cover it with clear embossing powder, and then we'll heat set it. And that's going to protect the black ink and not allow that Distress Oxide to bleed through. Now, sometimes I don't mind if the Distress Oxide bleeds through the ink. I actually think it adds a fun element to the design, but I just thought that we would go ahead and show you guys how to do this, so in case you don't want that ink bleeding through. And this is a quick solution to that problem. I recommend heat embossing on a flat surface. Now you want to make sure to always protect your surface with a heat-resistant silicone mat when doing this. It's my opinion that these next steps drastically reduce warping when heat setting. Preheat your heat gun, and with the paper lying flat, bring the heat to the embossing powder. If the powder does not start to melt immediately, the gun is not hot enough. Remove it and continue to let it heat up. Once it's hot, take the heat to the powder and chase the melting powder with the heat gun. Please do not shake the gun back and forth. That's a myth that is just not true. If the gun is hot enough, you should be able to heat this powder quickly and not worry about scorching that paper. Now, this small image should take no longer than just a few seconds to completely set. I'm going to set that to the side for right now so we can go ahead and get our bass stamped and get into the coloring of this image. Now, this image is not a big image, so the coloring process is going to be pretty quick, and I don't use a lot of different markers on it. I think maybe 7 or 8 markers total. And here you can see what we're going for. Ours will look a little bit different than this one because every time I color, my images never look exactly the same. So let's stamp this image out with Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I will be coloring with my Copic markers. Now you can use any color medium you have. It doesn't have to be alcohol markers. So if you've ever seen a bass, you know that the coloring on them is predominantly green across the top, and then that underbelly is usually a lighter color, like a creamy, almost pearly white color. So what I decided to do was to come in with my E04, and I'm laying that down along the lips of the fish. I'm going to lay it along the gills, just so that I have a little bit of pinkness to them. We're also going to come in with E70 to add more of a kind of ashy rose color to this. I'm trying not to go with bright colors on this fish. I want it to have more earth tones to it. So here I'm coming in with the E70. I'm going over the edges of the E04 that I had just laid down and pulling that color out just a little bit. I'm going to come back in wherever I feel like I need to darken up any areas with that E04. I'll come back in and lay that down, and then go back in with my E70 to continue to pull the edges of that out and blend that E04 out just a little bit. I'm going to leave some white areas showing while I'm coloring, and then eventually we'll go back in and fill those areas in towards the end of the coloring process. So again, I'm coming in with the E70 right under that, the gill area and down up underneath the mouth of this bass. I'm coming in with E43 at this point, and I'm just going to start to darken up some of the areas that I colored with the pink, go over that a little bit to knock that pink back just a little bit, not too much. Another thing I'm going to do with this E43 is lay down some areas that I feel like would be darker on this fish. So let me just go ahead and put this out here for you. I feel like I am not the person for you to come to for coloring tips and tricks because it's just not something that I put a lot of effort into. So for me, it's more about what makes me happy. If I like the way the image is coming along, I'm going to continue on with it. If I'm not happy with the way it's looking, I'll stop and reassess and either move on to a different color, or sometimes I'll just toss it and start over. So if you're looking for advice on coloring, I don't think I'm the right person for that. Probably someone else on the channel could give you better advice on light placement, shadows, and all of that fun stuff. I'm the person that says, you know what, get your markers, start coloring. Find you a picture on the internet of a fish or whatever it is you're coloring, and just use that as a guide to lay down your color. That's how I color. So literally, I have my phone sitting to the side. I have a picture of a bass pulled up. and I'm just kind of mimicking what I see on that picture onto my picture. Is it perfect? No. I do wish I had gone with even lighter colors along his belly area and the gill area. I wished I'd have done that a little bit different, but I didn't. I didn't let it bother me too much. I left it as is and continued on with it. And I ended up being pretty happy with the way that it turns out. So once I got through with that E43, I went ahead and started to blend that out with E41, and I'm finishing off the blend with E40. I'm going to come back in and add a little bit more darkness if I need to with my E43, but as of right now, I'm happy with the way it's looking. So I'm going to go ahead now and move us into the greens so we can wrap up the coloring process. So I'm coming in with my YG93 and laying down colors on the fins and on the lower part of the body right before it starts to fade into that beigey creamy color on the underbelly. And then we're going to come in with our YG95 to do the darkest part around the top and on the back side of his body. And that's pretty much going to wrap this fish up. So it's pretty easy to color this little guy because he's not a huge image, but he's sized perfect enough for the card that we're making. And so I say, remember, just enjoy the process. Pull up an image if you need to. Just kind of use that image as a guide and do your best with it. Don't get too wrapped up in the perfection of it all. This, in fact, you should be really having fun with this. This is about the person getting it. And I can tell you right now that my dad is not going to look at this image and be like, oh, you missed a spot there. Or the light should have bounced off of him and back into the boat at this point right here. Yeah, he's not going to do that. He's going to look at that beautiful scenery that we're getting ready to create, and he's going to be taken back to being on a lake and to a peaceful, happy place for him. And that's the whole purpose of this card. So here we are. We finished our coloring. We are placing that mat back into the Misty so we can stamp this again with our VersaFine Onyx Black ink. You know I love to restamp my images because it just pulls all that detail back out. I feel like when you stamp with the Memento Tuxedo Black ink and you use the Copic markers over it, it does knock that black ink back just a little bit, so you lose some of the details when you're coloring. So I really encourage you to try this step if you've never done it. Use a black ink and stamp back over. Now, I recommend that you use a black ink that's great for details. Like VersaFine Onyx Black ink is amazing for stamping fine details. So I find that I've been doing this a lot, and all my videos recently, you've seen me go back over and mention restamping once you're done coloring. So there you can see how it just makes that fish pop right off that paper. We're going to go ahead and take him and we're going to fussy cut him out. Now, normally I don't fussy cut, but today I thought, well, you know, he's not that big, so we'll just quickly cut him out. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take him to the scan and cut and get the mat out and get it all set up. So by the time I grab the scissors and trim him out, I'm good to go, and I don't have to worry about getting all the other extra stuff out just for this one image. So as we move through the card making process, I want to keep bringing up little things that you can do to your cards to add more detail to them, to let the recipient know that you were really thinking about them throughout the whole process. And the thing that I thought would be so neat here is if I had a rugged edge to my ink blended background, because we're dealing with the outdoors, the ruggedness of it. Why make it clean, modern lines? Let's tear masking tape or masking paper, just give it a fresh tear right along the edge. And then we're going to mask off half of this Bristol Smooth paper so that we can do our ink blending. And then when we remove this masking, it's going to give us this gorgeous rough edge along our ink blending. And it's just going to add an extra special element to your card. So now that I have my masking paper laid down, we're going to grab our magic mushrooms and distress oxides, and we're going to get to blending because that's where I'm my happiest. So I'm going to get started with fossilized amber, and I'm going to work off of that masking paper onto the Bristol Smooth. So we're working from right to left. And the reason that I'm working right to left is we tore that masking tape or paper, whatever you're using, And when we did, some of that ripped edge loses some of the stickiness. So in order to keep the edge laying flat as I'm working, I want to work off of the edge of the masking tape and onto the Bristol Smooth. That way I don't pull that edge up working against the masking tape. So you can see I've laid down some fossilized amber. That's going to start me out on my sunrise. And I'm using the edge of my magic mushroom to blend that up and down, just to kind of soften those edges out a little bit from that fossilized amber. Then we're going to come in with our spiced marmalade and go ahead and start to lay that down above the fossilized amber. And we're not doing a lot of ink blending here. This is not a big area that you're ink blending because you have most of it masked off. And it's pretty easy with the magic mushrooms and the Bristol Smooth paper together to blend these distress oxides. So one thing I do want to say, when you're picking the ink up with your magic mushrooms, you might not want to pick up quite so much ink at the beginning. Pick it up, start to lay it down, and then if you realize you need more, go back and pick up more, because this lays down pretty heavy off of the magic mushroom. It's gorgeous, don't get me wrong. It is vibrant, it's beautiful, but when you're blending, you don't want too much laid down. You want to kind of build those layers, right? So again, I'm coming in, I'm gripping onto the edge of my sponge. I'm using the sides of it to help blend down into that fossilized amber and just creating this beautiful sunrise blend on the Bristol Smooth paper. Next, I'm going to come in with some rusty Hinge, and we're going to put that between the fossilized amber and the spiced marmalade. And I just wanted to kind of darken that area up just a little bit. You don't want to do a lot of it, just a little bit will work just fine. Again, you don't be afraid to use the side of your magic mushroom to help you blend all these colors in together. Use your tools best way that works for you. And I found that I've had great success with these magic mushrooms so far using dye inks and the distress oxides. And I've been using them and I've had no problems with the distress oxides causing any problems with my magic mushrooms. Now, you need to know that this set I'm working with is dedicated just to the distress oxides, and I haven't been wetting these before using them. I do clean them up after I use them by wiping them on my towel, but I have not wet these at all. And that was one of the things that was recommended, was that you wet these before you use them. But I'm finding with the distress oxides, you really don't need to wet them. So here I'm coming in with tumbled glass to create the blue in the sky, and I'm just lightly pouncing that color down to blend it down into our orange sunrise that we have going here. And I'm just being very careful with it. This kind of reminds me of when I put my makeup on. So I actually was enjoying this process. So I come down below the yellow, the fossilized amber, and I'm starting to lay down more of the tumbled glass. And next, I'm going to come in with prized ribbon, and we're going to go ahead and finish off the bottom. Now, I do want to point out that I did mask off the white part of the boat that was showing, because you don't want it to look like there's water in your boat. So be sure that you're masking off anything that needs to be covered up, so you're not going to end up with a sinking boat. So here I have quite a bit of ink on my magic mushroom. So I'm just taking my rag, and you can see I'm just cleaning it off by running the magic mushroom over the rag, twisting it down into the rag, cleaning it off a little bit, because I picked up a little bit too much of that blue distress oxide on there. But it cleans up easily. Again, I'm going in with the side of my magic mushroom, and I'm pulling that color down now and into that prized ribbon. That's pretty much going to wrap us up on the ink blending, because we're going to be doing some stenciling over this. So a lot of this area right in the center here where I'm working at right now, you're actually not going to end up seeing, because we're going to create a horizon right there. So I want you to leave that masking paper down over that Bristol Smooth cardstock, and we're going to grab the Winter Wonderland stencil. This is a great stencil to use throughout the year because it has so many amazing different details on it. We have this tree line here that we're going to use. There's different sizes of tree lines. There's one that's on a slope. There's some penguins. There's polar bears. We even have an area on here that I just covered up with masking paper so I don't accidentally stencil that area, that we're going to use to create water ripples on our card. So what I've done is I've grabbed the Distress Oxide black soot and I've picked up my black magic mushroom sponge. And I've just going to pounce the black ink down over my stencil. Now, notice how I laid down another piece of masking paper because I need a straight line to create that horizon. It's going to create the water's edge. When you're looking out over the lake and you see trees, you see a water's edge there, right? So that's why we needed to lay down a piece of masking paper before we start doing this process. And you need this piece of paper to be straight because it's creating that horizon for us. So all I did was tear a piece of masking tape and I just used the grid on my glass mat to make sure it was straight. And I masked off the bottom part, which is the water area of my card. And now I'm coming in with my Winter Wonderland stencil to create a tree line. So the first tree line that I did, I made sure I laid down enough ink that it was black. So I moved the stencil up and shifted it just a little bit. And now I'm going to come in and do a lighter shade of tree line behind the first tree line. And that's going to create some dimension for us because now it looks like there's more than just one row of trees. There's a whole forest out there. You can even do 3 rows of trees if you want. I don't recommend going too far beyond that. But when we peel this back, you can start to see how we created that horizon. Next, what we're going to do, I'm going to wipe up a little bit of the ink around my card so it doesn't get messed up. But I'm also going to remove the masking paper from this stencil where we're going to use it to create our water ripples. So to clean up the edge here, just take a dry rag and pull straight down. You don't want to rub back and forth with this stencil. It has some very fine details on it. You just want to pull straight down. Flip it over and clean the backside off as well before you bring it back to the card. Now this next step is so easy. We're going to start right up by the trees and we're going to work our way down creating these water ripples. And I'm going to use Lost Shadow Distress Oxide with this. Now, there's not a gray magic mushroom sponge, so I don't do a lot of browns. So I'm just going to use my brown magic mushroom for the Lost Shadow ink, and we'll pick that ink up and then just do the same thing, pounce it down over that stenciled area. Because I get a little bit crazy when I'm stenciling and I don't always pay attention. I go ahead and try to mask off any area that I think I might end up stenciling down where I don't want it. So there you saw I just took a piece of my scrap masking paper and masked off that tree line on the bottom so that I could go ahead and start to add this water ripple to our card. This is such a beautiful effect on this card. I love the way it turns out. When you're looking at your supplies, try to look at them in as many different ways as you possibly can so that you're getting the most bang for your buck. And this stencil is going to give you the most bang for your buck because you have so many options with it. But there you can see how we created that lost shadow and it gave that white ripply effect that you get on the water. And we're going to just work this all the way down to the bottom of our card panel here. So real quick, I want to talk to you about how I end up picking products to go with what I'm using. So for me, it's just a matter of what's going to work to create my scene. And I knew this stencil had this great tree line on it, and I wanted to create that horizon with the tree line. I also remembered this great design on this stencil that would be perfect for the water ripples that we're doing here. Another stencil that would be great with this is it's sunny because it has so many different stenciled suns on there. You could create your sun rising up over those trees if you wanted to. So I just think about what would be happening in my scene. If my dad's sitting on a lake, what are things that he would be seeing around him? And one, of course, we would see a horizon and we would probably see trees. and we would probably see some really small ripples going across the water. So that's how I end up picking the products that I'm using to create this scene. I just think about what would the person be looking at as they're in this scene or in their happy place. The next step is to remove any excess ink you may have laying on top of your heat embossed areas. So I'm going to grab a Q-tip and just clean those small areas up. And by doing that, it's going to prevent me accidentally getting it on my fingers and transferring it onto the white area of this card panel once we peel this masking tape off. So just take the time to do a little bit of cleanup, and when you're happy with that, go ahead and slowly peel that release paper back onto itself to remove it and reveal your gorgeous scene. Now, I love the way this card turns out. I think it's such a great masculine card, and it's perfect for anybody who loves bass fishing. So what we want to do next is I wanted to draw the line out a little bit more so it looks like that fish was really putting up a fight, right? So I'm just grabbing a black fine tip pen. I laid my fish down. I marked the spot where his mouth would be. And I know now where to come back around and finish off my line. And there we have our outdoor scene. So I used round foam adhesives to add the fish and pop him up to give him a little bit of dimension off the front of the card. I did add a very small strip of black cardstock to the right side with my Barely Art glue. Whimsy now carries that in their online shop and the boutique. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp Go Fishing along the bottom. Now I may decide to come back later and do more sentiment right across the top or stamp Happy Father's Day on the inside of the card. But for now, it's pretty much done. And if I do decide that that's something I want to do, it'll only take me about 5 minutes to come in and add those extra sentiments. So now you know the secret to making a perfect masculine card. Just think about the recipient and what they love. And once you think about what they love, think about things that go with it. And honestly, this theory can be applied anytime to any card. It doesn't have to be a masculine card. But since I wanted to focus on creating a Father's Day card, I just thought this would be a great time to discuss masculine cards. And it's like I said, it's a theory that can be used anytime during the card making process. But it's a great one to go back to if you're struggling with a masculine card. So with that said, just know that I have all my affiliate links down below for you. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments or you can even email me and I will answer you just as quickly as I possibly can. Don't forget, you can always find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. We love to have you follow us in those places as well as here on YouTube. I just want to take a second to say thank you, and I appreciate you so much for taking time to join us here on the YouTube channel. We really do appreciate you guys for following along, and I hope you have an amazing Saturday.